Hello, I'm Blair Bateson, and this is 21st Century Politics. We're an organization that's dedicated to advancing the interests of millennials in Canadian politics, and if you'd like to read more, you can check out our website at 21stcenturypolitics.ca. This is the video version of the Millennial Consensus. The text version is also available on the website. So what is the Millennial Consensus? Well, if you're a millennial, you've probably heard lines, or spoken lines, like, politics just doesn't appeal to me, I don't like any of the options, why should I even bother voting? It's not a coincidence that so many millennials feel like that. The political parties of today are still fighting many of the same battles they've been fighting since the 1960s, and they haven't noticed that there's a huge amount of consensus on many issues among those under 30. The problem is this consensus isn't represented by anyone. It's split amongst all the major parties, and sometimes no party offers a policy that's good for millennials. We're going to talk about the Millennial Consensus as we understand it today. As we hear from millennials across Canada, we'll refine this consensus and provide more detailed policy that could be used to advocate for millennials. Eventually, we hope to be able to crowdsource policy directly with the input of millennials across Canada. So what does the Millennial Consensus look like? Well, it's globalist. The world is smaller than ever before. More than any other generation, millennials are well-traveled and worldly. We don't see foreigners as others. We see them as friends, colleagues, and partners. Millennials support bringing down barriers within and between countries and working together with other countries on issues of global importance. We're generally quite wary of unilateral action or policy that advantages Canadians at the expense of others. This outlook informs our views on issues like climate change, trade, intellectual property, and terrorism. The Millennial Consensus is long-term. Simply as a function of our age, millennials bring a long-term view to politics. We plan to be around for most of the 21st century, and we need to advocate for a policy that makes sense from that perspective. Millennials all have an interest in fiscal prudence, sustainable and effective healthcare and education, long-run economic stability and growth, environmental protection, and coherent and effective security policy. These issues often are focused only on the next electoral cycle, and that's unacceptable to us. Millennials are pluralistic. Far more than any other generation, millennials are tolerant from those different from themselves. On social issues, we exhibit a strong libertarian streak, and we think people should be able to do what they want as long as they're not negatively affecting others. The culture wars hardly exist within our generation, and there's overwhelming support for strong protection of civil liberties. On issues like gay rights, drug policy, privacy, and individual freedoms, most millennials think alike. Millennials are entrepreneurial. By and large, we're dreamers. Most of us grew up being told to pursue our passions, and studies show that we're far more concerned with making a difference or doing something meaningful with our lives than people of older generations. We're the best educated generation ever, and those skills coincide with the technical revolution that has given us access to exponentially more information and far better tools than any previous generation. Millennials will support policy that enable them to go after what they want with minimum interference. They want a free and open economy that doesn't advantage or subsidize entrenched interests. They want to keep the internet open and vibrant, and they want an efficient, effective, and streamlined environment for both business and government. Millennials are secular. It's no secret our generation is the least religious one ever. Those of us who are religious mostly prefer not to mix religion and politics. There is near unanimous agreement among millennials on the value of critical thought, evidence-based reasoning, and government policy that treats people the same, no matter their religion or lack thereof. Millennials also tend to react negatively to religious practice that infringes on the rights and dignity of certain groups. Millennials are anti-partisan. We're a generation of collaborators. Most of us grew up with and suffered through dozens of group projects in school. As the internet grew up alongside us, we saw the power of cooperation between millions of users transform the world. Studies consistently show that we value teamwork and cooperation more than any generation since World War II. Millennial politics will advocate anti-partisanship, not just non-partisanship, where personal attacks and fear-mongering are actively called out and disparaged. Our politics will be made to work with others, not against them. Canadians are better than almost anyone at finding common ground, and millennials value that. Millennials are better than anyone else at dealing with trolls on the internet, and that's got to come into politics in much the same way that it has come into the online world. One last note, on some issues, millennials don't agree. There is still wide disagreement among millennials on what proper economic policies should be enacted, proper level of taxation, exactly how we maintain fiscal prudence for the long term, and on issues like security policy. On these issues, we're going to do the research, but we're not going to advocate for something until a consensus emerges. What we will advocate for is an election of Canadians that are well informed and committed to making decisions based on the best available evidence. And we believe that that will allow them to make decisions that do benefit most millennials. Thank you, and see you next time.